closed.
You don't look the sort who can afford to turn down legitimate work.
What do you want?
How about we start with a light?
Well, you got a name, miss?
Elizabeth. You can call me Elizabeth.
Hello once again, players of good video games. My name is Pell, and this is my review of Bioshock Infinite's Burial at Sea DLC. I'm not going to be just covering part 1 or part 2. I'm covering both parts of the DLC in this review. So, that being said, since the DLC has been out for about a month now, in its entirety, there will be spoilers in this from both parts. So if you have not completed Burial at Sea, probably don't watch this unless you don't care about spoilers. So, getting into that. The first part of the DLC stars Booker DeWitt, and you play as him again. Very, very quickly into the DLC, you run across Elizabeth, and this, for all knowledge, is the same Elizabeth that you ended the original Bioshock Infinite story with. She doesn't say outright right away that she knows of the events of Infinite, but by the end of part 1, it is made very, very obvious that is the point. And what they are doing is trying to locate this little girl named Sally. Booker believes that she is dead, and Elizabeth has proof that she is not. And so they are off trying to find this girl. There's a bunch of behind-the-scenes things happening. In Booker's head, he's having the flashbacks and the nosebleeds like he did in Infinite. And eventually, as the story goes on, Booker and Elizabeth end up finding Sally, and in order to get to her, they have to force her out through the vent system, because she is in the vents. So they have to close all the vents, force her out of just a single one. And as they're about to do that, her big daddy shows up, and so they have to take that out. That's essentially the final boss of part 1 of the DLC.
Sally, come on. I'm gonna get you out of here. Sally! Come out here right now!
No!
Sally. No.
Mr. Bubbles!
And once you do that, there's a cutscene in which you see that Booker DeWitt is Comstock, and we see that the Booker, which we have been playing as in Burial at Sea, is a different version of Booker DeWitt / Comstock that we knew in Infinite. This is a Booker who accepted the baptism as Comstock, and in the middle of building Columbia, he ended up getting Anna killed, and thus he had the Luteces send him to Rapture, erase all his memories, and he essentially became Booker DeWitt and was living out his life as a detective in Rapture. So, with those memories emerged, he tries to apologize to Elizabeth, and he ends up getting stabbed through the chest with the Big Daddy's drill as it reawakens.
Had to have me, didn't you?
No, this isn't right.
And the guilt was too much.
You turn to us to solve your problem.
To provide a place to go where you might forget.
Where there never was an Anna in the first place.
Comstock was never one to own up to his errors, was he, brother?
Never comfortable with the choices he made.
Always seeking someone else's life to claim as his own.
Elizabeth. Child. I am so sorry.
No, you're not. But you're about to be.
and so that is the end of part 1. In terms of graphics for this part, we see the graphics are about the same as they were in Infinite. Obviously, it's been a year since the original game came out, and so the graphics are a little bit more touched up. They look nicer, and the environment of Rapture in and of itself is gorgeous and just beautiful. And obviously, since the majority of people played Bioshock 1, those graphics compared to Burial at Seas are just, there's a world of difference, and it looks just great. Character models as well look really good. There's not a ton of cutscenes. There's no CGI cutscenes in part 1. And but yeah, character models look fine. You can tell that there's a lot of detail that goes into these things, and Irrational Games did a great job with that. Gameplay wise, the gameplay is a lot of the same that we had in Bioshock Infinite. You have a few weapons that you can use to play through the game with. I personally went with my carbine in hand pistol, whatever it was called. Just went through it with that combination. There's a few new vigors that you can get, and a few of the same ones as there was in Infinite. So gameplay wise, it's really not a huge difference. There's still the rail system that you use to get from place to place, and the enemies are a little bit of the same. There's essentially the same general way of taking them out as there was in Infinite. If you have played through Bioshock Infinite, which I'm assuming that you have, if you're playing this DLC, you will feel really comfortable playing through Burial at Sea, part 1 at least. And so in terms of enjoyment, I came out of part 1 of Burial at Sea very much enjoying it. I loved it and was very much anticipating part 2. And so now I'm going to talk about part 2. So if for some reason you have not played part 2 yet, I suppose stop here.
Sally, come out!
She wasn't yours, Comstock.
Elizabeth, I am so sorry.
No, you're not. But you're about to be.
Mademoiselle,
Yes?
quel est votre nom?
Elizabeth.
Pour vous, Elisabeth.
Oh, no. No, I couldn't. I can't accept...
Je vous en prie, j'insiste.
Thank you.
And so, part 2 opens up with Elizabeth, and she is the main character in this part because Booker is dead. And we see her in Paris. She is chasing after Sally, and then goes all nightmarish, and she ends up having some sort of a nightmare.
Go away. It wasn't my fault. I didn't do anything! No! It wasn't my fault! Leave me alone! Can't you just leave me alone? I'm sorry! I'm sorry! I never should have left. I never should have left you there.
She awakens from it to see Atlas, who was the main antagonist in Bioshock 1. He is essentially just getting ready to kill her, and she sees the ghost, I suppose, or an image of Booker appear before her. He tells her to go find a scientist guy who will help her out. She tells Atlas that she will go and do that, and then he lets her go off and find what he needs in order to get the prison area that he's in risen up to the rest of Rapture so he can ignite a civil war. And that is a little bit of what happens in this part of the DLC. It's a lot of Elizabeth going from place to place and doing things for Atlas. Not a ton, but that is where you start out with. You have to go to, I think the guy's name is Suchong, and you have to assemble his machine, fix it, and then you get to go back to Columbia. And this was something which really, really surprised me, is that you go and you fight in both Rapture and in Columbia in this DLC. And Columbia looks really, really cool. Again, obviously it's going to look a lot the same as the original game, and then it's just really neat to see that difference. And you get to fight off the Vox Populi. There's a story with that, giving some background in terms of the main leader of the Vox Populi and her motivations behind what she did in terms of turning Elizabeth into a killer. And so that's really interesting. Going back into Rapture, she essentially has to get Atlas the anti-gravity device thing, the anti-gravity particle, and she does it. Atlas takes her hostage and essentially realizes that she is going to be a lot more useful than Sally is. He has Sally in his position.
Now bring me the girl.
Did your mom ever teach you not to put your faith in strange foreign men?
Just give me the girl. She means nothing to you.
You've got that right. The girl means nothing. But you, love, you mean the world.
If you won't remain still, I can't be held responsible for what comes next.
And this was easily one of the most cringe-worthy bits of the game for me, because he does like this, God, it's so brutal. He sticks like a nail or like a really long thing. You can see it on the screen before you. He sticks something through your eye, well, not through it, but like on the side of your eye, up to your skull, and then just starts lightly tapping it with a hammer. And it was, I don't know why, but it made me cringe much more than any horror movie has. And it was just a very brutal scene to watch. And then he starts doing it to Sally, and then Elizabeth has a moment of memory because she has lost her powers because she died technically in exchange for getting a second chance. She has to give up her powers, and she remembers that Suchong has the ace in the hole that Atlas is looking for in his office. She goes out to get that, and as she gives it to him, she knows that Atlas is going to kill her. She knows that she's going to die, and she does it anyway. Atlas hits her with the hammer. She has a moment where she finds herself on Jack from Bioshock 1, his plane, before it goes down. She's walking up the aisle to him, and it just goes back and forth between them.
What is this? It's just a bunch of gibberish. What does this say, you little whore? Hey, hey, hey! What does this say?
It says... Would you kindly...
We realize that the ace in the hole that we have given Atlas is the key phrase, "Would you kindly," which is what Atlas used to control the protagonist of Bioshock 1. And so it's revealed that everything that caused Bioshock 1 was technically because of Elizabeth. Elizabeth going after Sally ended up freeing Atlas from his prison and then giving him the key phrase. It was all Elizabeth, and it's a very interesting way to tie up the story as it is, and I just found it really, really intriguing. If you guys want me to make a video like talking specifically on the story of all three games, I would be happy to do that. Just leave it in comments and I might do it at some point. No idea when, but I will do it. Graphic wise, the graphics are also not going to change a ton in the second part of the DLC, and so there's not a whole lot to say about that. Gameplay wise, the gameplay is a lot different than the rest of Bioshock Infinite in its entirety. Instead of being the strong, powerful protagonist, Elizabeth is not that. She has to sneak around. She can fight, but the weapon damage is very noticeably weaker than it would be with Booker. I tried to fight a few times, and it was just so obvious how much weaker the guns were, and the vigors for that matter, as Elizabeth. And so it's recommended to sneak around. You get a new plasmid which will allow you to be invisible, so you can sneak a little bit more easily, but it is still very difficult to do for the entirety of the DLC. I probably didn't cover everything that the DLC had to offer in this review, but I did enjoy it very, very much. It was immensely entertaining, a great way to end what would assumably be this trilogy, and we probably won't see another Bioshock game for a very long time since the studio ended and they closed their doors, and this was the last that we would see of Bioshock from them. So, whether or not they had future plans to further the franchise, who knows if they'll pass those on to whoever gets the rights to it next. But we'll see what happens. Who knows, in 5 years we could get another Bioshock game. But at this point in time, that's what it is looking like. And I very much enjoyed Burial at Sea. If for some reason you have not played Infinite, any of the Bioshock games, or the DLC, definitely take the time out of your day to do it. It's well worth it, and I highly recommend it. That is my review for Bioshock Infinite, Burial at Sea. Like, favorite, comment, and subscribe if you so choose. I'd appreciate it immensely. Go and buy my short story called The Bridge on Amazon for just 99 cents. Link is down in the description down below, and that would be lovely. And as always, my good people, my name is Nick Pell, and once again, keep on gaming.
Une part de bonheur dont je connais